You are listening to the And I Quote podcast, brought to you by Coterie Insurance. And I Quote was on a mission to share the importance of building relationships in the insurance industry. Through conversations with insurance agents and industry leaders, Coterie is bringing you episodes focused on relevant and trending topics.
Welcome to the And I Quote podcast. I'm Ashleigh Burden, one of the hosts, and I'm really excited today to chat with our guests. We have John Morlan of SmarterRisk. John is joining us on the podcast. We've recently partnered with SmarterRisk to provide some tailored risk management solutions to our small business owner clients. I'm so really excited to dive into John's background, the background of SmarterRisk, and really share some great insights on risk management with our audience. So welcome to the podcast, John. Excited to have you on.
Well, thank you, Ashley. I'm excited to be here and excited to talk about it.
Absolutely, absolutely. So you're the founder and CEO. The company was founded around 2021. We were talking about that a little bit beforehand, but I'd love for you to just give our audience an intro of yourself and really your background and how you got SmarterRisk started.
Yeah, so I'm probably like a lot of people in insurance. I ended up here kind of accidentally. So I started my career with LA&H, selling life accident and health with Mutual of Omaha. Did that for a couple years, worked for Coterie Insurance for a few years, selling commercial insurance. And that was when I was first exposed to risk control. And I was like really fascinated with it, which I know probably sounds crazy to some people, but I was like, I want to know more about how this works. And so as it turns out, ISO, Insurance Service Office, which is now VeriRisk, they had put out an advertisement for a loss control, risk control consultant. And I applied for it. It took me 2 years, but I got a job with ISO. And that was really the beginning of my loss control career. It was really, honestly, I was a young consultant. I was 25. And back then they would put you with basically an industry expert. And they had a mentorship program. And so it was a really great time to be a risk control consultant. But no, I really enjoyed doing risk control. I think for me, the part that I enjoyed the most was you would go out and visit with small business owners, and they would always tell you two things. They would tell you how they met their spouse and how they started their business. They always tell you those two things. And it was really a lot of fun. It was like, to me, it was like that show. I don't know. Have you ever seen the show, How It's Made, how it works or whatever it's called? To me, it was that. I would get tours of, manufacturing facilities or, whatever, people in the service industry, whatever it was, in these small middle market accounts. And I would get to see like the inside scoop of like how things are done. And so I always just really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the people. And so I did that for 5 years. And then it was 7 years I did that independently. And I think the biggest lesson or my takeaway from that was when you sit down with small business owners that much for that long of a period, you really learn what their struggles are. Risk control is one of those things. It's not very accessible for small businesses, and they don't get a lot of service. And I say it because the part that's really difficult with small businesses pay, individually, they pay a very small premium. Collectively, they pay a lot. But I thought there was just space in there for a service if someone could figure out how to provide risk control services, drive down the cost, and also improve the delivery. Like, how do we deploy risk control? And so that kind of led me to SmarterRisk. And then kind of had a serendipitous meeting with a developer and said, hey, I've got this idea for a project, but I need a developer. And this was Adrian, one of my co-founders, actually. And he's like, well, I'm a developer that needs a project. So we're a match made in heaven. So we spent several years just working on a beta. And we were doing it part-time. So that was kind of the genesis or the beginning of it. And then after I was independent for 7 years, I actually worked one-on-one with companies implementing safety and risk control programs. And that was really important too, because when we went to build the app, I kind of understood it from both perspectives. Like, okay, the consultant saying, hey, you need to have these programs in place, and then being the one responsible for putting those programs in place. And so you learn what the challenges are there. That's the short version.
No, I love that. Well, similar to you, I love like founder stories and just like how it's made. So I think that's incredible. And you kind of touched on this, but really like thinking about small businesses. I mean, obviously, even from the time you started, we've gone through COVID now. What are some of those just really unique like risks that small businesses face, and how does that differ kind of from larger enterprises? What have you seen in your experience?
Well, I think I'll give you the generic answer on that one, because I think a lot of small businesses, again, have limited resources, so they really struggle with this. A lot of times they'll think of their insurance plan as their risk management plan. And insurance is super important, and it's definitely one half of the solution. We've got to have the insurance, but the other part of it is risk control. And that's where I think that the real challenge comes in for them, because with the large enterprises, a lot of them have a risk manager on staff, or they have a safety manager. So they have someone on staff they can consult with that can kind of guide them and advise them on how to manage their risk. And most small businesses don't have that. So that's that missing component. And that's, like I said, been, I think, a real struggle for them.
Yeah. I definitely would agree with that. I mean, oftentimes, especially in the micro small space, I mean, it's literally a one one or two, person show. So really that risk management piece in their minds is they're not even really considering it from the start, or if they are, it's just something that they don't have the time to dedicate to, which is again where your product I think really comes in and makes a huge difference. So I guess in your experience, like what are some of the things that you've seen work really well for risk management for small businesses?
I think the big thing for small businesses is sometimes a loss can put them out of business, right? And it happens. And I think for them, the number one thing is managing their risk so they can avoid claims. I mean, claims avoidance is what they want to do. And I often say that business owners, they pay for claims twice. So they pay for it in higher premiums typically, right? Then they also incur all the uninsured costs. And so for those who aren't familiar with the uninsured costs, things like, oh, I have to pay overtime now because one of my workers has been injured. So now I need to pay overtime. Or we can't get production back up fast enough. So now we've lost this sale, or we have to retrain someone. So there's all these uninsured costs. And there's estimates out there and they range, but it's anywhere from 2 to 2.5 times the insured cost. So it's quite an expense for a small business that could be really dangerous for them. So I think that's the big advantage of them having like a sound risk management program in place, is avoiding claims. The other thing is reputation. No company, no matter who you are, wants to be on the nightly news. I'm showing my age now, or I guess on social media,
Yep.
where they've had a safety incident or something of that nature. No one wants that kind of press or that kind of publicity, right? So I think that's really important. And then the third part is really regulatory, right? No one wants to, run afoul of OSHA or DOT or one of the other regulatory agencies. So managing your risk is really a financial plan. It's a really, really important component of your risk management program.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And just thinking through, a busy business owner, right? They're probably focusing a lot of their efforts onto their business planning and growth plans and things like that. But that risk management piece is huge, and it's something that again in the long run I think will protect them and protect their bottom lines. It's always no one wants to think about the worst case scenarios, but in risk management and insurance, we kind of have to think about that and really factor that into the planning. So, thank you for mentioning that. I want to switch gears just a little bit and talk about the role that like an insurance agent or broker might play in in this scenario of helping a small business with their risk management. So, what are some things or just points that you think agents or brokers who are selling to small business owners, what should they be thinking about when it comes to recommending risk management solutions?
I think the agency network's really important. They are your trusted advisor. I mean, I have an insurance agent. Of course, if I have, like, I just had an issue with my renewal. And so the first thing I did was pick up the phone and say, okay, what do we need to do here? Right. And so I think, it's really important to have that agent in place as that kind of trusted advisor. But I think we also could go back here, just like small businesses and large businesses have different struggles and challenges. I think a lot of these small commercial outfits have a lot of challenges too. And they've been able to sell insurance and help their client transfer the risk. But the hard part for them is, how do we provide risk control services, right? Because it's really expensive. So a lot of the big agencies can afford to have a risk control staff, but the small agencies, of course, can't. And that's just another thing, SmarterRisk, that we offer. We actually have a program specifically for agencies to help them kind of fill that gap. So my view is, the agent of the future isn't just selling someone a policy or insurance. They're really helping them manage their risk. And I think they're in a unique position to really talk to their client and get them to understand the importance of, okay, we need the insurance, the risk transfer is super important, but we also need the risk control component. And then having vendors or relationships where you can help your clients get the help they need.
100%. And I think that piece is huge because, small businesses, it is in some ways, it can be very niche and it's kind of hard. Even sometimes we find ourselves at Coterie, like a small business owner, they can, have maybe one major operation, but they're doing all these other like, ancillary things. And so it's like really diving deep, especially for their agent to dive in and understand like, what are their operations? What are the things that are really that they're exposed to in their risk? And so I think really like meeting that need and being that trusted resource is something that is definitely huge for agents. So I love that that's, something that you and your company are thinking about. So thinking about obviously it was like a match made in heaven for Coterie and Smarter Risk to come together because again, we're passionate about small businesses and protecting them. So can you explain a little bit more about the partnership between Coterie and Smarter Risk?
Yeah, I do think it's a match made in heaven. One of the things I love about Coterie is this idea that let's take all the friction out of small business insurance and really simplify that process because, as you know, in insurance, there's still a lot of manual processes. It still can be a very difficult thing for a small business owner to just pull a very basic, and so I love that you guys really focus on technology and leveraging that technology to make it easy for small business owners. And we kind of have the same philosophy, right? We want to leverage technology to make risk control very simple. So, like, just for an example, with our risk assessment, it takes, and I've done this for a long time, it would take me 5 hours total time, even for a small account to go do a risk assessment, right? Our app can do it in 15 minutes and you don't need any experience. It's just it takes the friction out, right? And that's what we want. That's why we have technology. I mean, I'm always amazed at the technology we have now and that we kind of take for granted. And I thought with insurance in general, specifically risk control, is wow, let's just take the technology that already exists and leverage it to make life easier for everyone. So I'm really excited about the partnership. I think it's going to be great. Small businesses can get the insurance they need without a lot of friction, and then they can get the risk control services they need without a lot of friction.
Yeah. I think that piece is huge, removing the friction, and just thinking through it. I'm a former small business owner, and just knowing again, like there's so many different factors to consider, whether you're home based or you have, a larger operation, employees, like all of that. And there's just so many moving parts to think about as a small business owner. So having at least one piece be a little bit easier, have a little bit less friction there, I think that's incredible. And so thinking about kind of the future for your business, what are you most excited about?
Well, we do. I'll go ahead and tease this. So we just released a photo feature for the app. So I'll tell you, I've always been against photos for our platform, and I'll explain why. Even though I get a lot of pushback on this and have forever, I've always felt like the Smarter Risk app is a consulting app. It's not an inspection app. And so our goal was to make this very, very simple and advise small businesses on how to manage the risk. That's what it was always about. But I got a lot of people pushing me on the photo app, and I said, fine. I said, we'll do a photo app. But there's some things we want to do, or we want to roll it out in a different way. We don't want to just have photos. So I will say the first rollout right now, it's a free feature. It is basically just photos, but you can add it if you're on any of our paid accounts. If you're a user, you're on any paid account, you can add photos. But that's just stage one. So stage two will be recommendation photos. So when you complete a rec, you'll be able to snap a photo, and that way you can submit that to your insurance partner and they can see that. Third stage will be access to insurance partners. And then our fourth stage will be AI enabled. And we've got some really cool features planned. So I'm really excited about that part. But we very much, we're a startup. So our mentality is, hey, let's create an MVP of features, roll them out, get feedback, and then iterate on them. And we've got a lot of plans for that feature, and it's going to be pretty exciting here in the next 6 months. So that's probably what I'm most excited about. So I hope users like it as much we're excited about it. So
Yeah, no, well,
users
you
and
heard it here
partners.
first. No, that's very exciting, and I think, yeah, definitely anything that's gonna leverage like more real time, I think, and then obviously with the artificial intelligence as well. It seems like I love the approach that you're taking to it of kind of phased in and humble leadership. Humble shout out to you because if even though you were somewhat against it, to really like think through like, okay, this can be something that's really effective and beneficial.
If we're going to do something like this, I wanted it to be really effective and really help policyholders. And when we get to the AI component, we've got some really great features planned. And like right now, I'll tell you the app, we don't use AI in the current iteration of the app. And the reason we chose that is an algorithm is extremely effective and consistent. where sometimes AI can hallucinate. And
Yeah.
so we're getting close. I'm a big fan of AI. I just don't think we're quite there yet, but we're getting really, really close, particularly how fast it's moving. But the beauty of an algorithm is like with the assessment, you complete it in about 15 minutes. It goes through and identifies any risk and then instantly generates a risk improvement plan. And it's consistent every single time. When I say it's consistent, it's also dynamic. So it's customized to that specific risk. Some people will ask, well, is this industry specific? The answer is to that yes and no,
Mhm.
because it actually is specific to that risk. So if you tell our app, we don't have this exposure, say we don't perform welding, that's not going to ask you anything else about welding. If you do welding, it's going to ask you some additional questions, right? So it's pretty smart. And that also helps us with the speed.
Mhm.
That makes it really, really fast.
That's incredible. I'm glad you shared that piece too, because I think for our, agents and brokers and our partners who are listening, to really think through if you're, on the phone or you're at, your office with an insured or a potential insured, a client, and you're having these discussions, you can really use this tool to even help guide, those discussions in real time. And it's tailored, right? Like I think that's the other piece too. In small
Yeah.
business, again, we talked about it. There's so many nuances to their operations. So really having that tailored approach and knowing like what questions to talk through and discuss, I think it enables agents again even to kind of be a little bit I won't say hands off, but they can rely on the tool to do that piece of the risk management for them and really focus in on them just doing the servicing and building that relationship with their clients.
And there's two things there that I think is important. You can hand a client a Word document or, some checklist form, and it's very time consuming and it's difficult. They don't know what applies. And the beauty of using technology is that we can customize every interaction with a policyholder. And then as an agent, you can look at the risk report, depending on what level of access you've got. You can look at the risk report or the recommendations, and you can get a really good feel for what that risk is, for how you need to customize that risk management plan for that client.
That's incredible. I love that. It's a really, I think, just again a really robust tool that I think it seems like you're really scratching the surface, but there's so many cool things that you already accomplished, and so I'm excited to see the next 6 months of what your team rolls out because it sounds incredible. One last question I want to kind of leave with is really thinking through, whether it's a small business owner or even an agent, if they're really just starting to, maybe the small business owner will say is just, maybe they're just getting started today or they're just, really like diving into the topic of understanding what their true risks are and how to mitigate, where would you suggest that they start?
Yeah. So, and I'm going to be biased here. Yeah, they should really start with SmarterRisk. So, go on and take the risk assessment and really understand what your risks are. Get your risk improvement plan so you know what you need to change. You can do that manually. Like I said, you can probably call your agent and they might be able to hand you some forms and you can try to figure it out. But it's going to take you a lot more time. It's much easier to start there. And then once you have your risk improvement plan, once you know these are the things we need to change, that takes some effort. Like you've got to stay up to date and focus on that and make sure those changes get implemented. And that's difficult to do in an organization. I've done that. And it's
Mhm.
very, very difficult. And it kind of goes to basics of change management, right? But then train your people and make sure everyone understands the changes. They understand, hey, we're implementing these new safety policies and this is why. And then make sure they're trained and they understand that so those changes stick, because humans have a tendency to go back and slip into old habits. I've seen
Yeah,
it. It's really, really important that once you make these changes to your organization, you also train your people on it,
that's
get
huge. I
everyone
think that's
aligned.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really key step there. Well, I think you've shared some really great insights. I'm really excited because again, this is something I kind of nerd out on a little bit. Again, being a former small business owner, but then obviously being here at Coterie because we're so passionate about small businesses. But really excited again just to have your organization on as a partner and really just thrilled that just to continue to grow that partnership and really what it can mean for our agents and then also like I said their small business clients. So before we close out the episode, is there a way that our audience can learn more about Smarter Risk or any professional organizations that you're part of that you want to share?
Yeah, they could. Yeah, just go to smarterrisk.com. We have everything on our website. We'll give you this warning though. If you're signed up through the Coterie MMR program, do not sign up on the site. You will get a special link just for you. You'll get it in email. You get a welcome email that has all that in there. So you don't want to sign up on the site. You want to wait for that email. But yeah, just check out smarterrisk.com. We're also on a lot of social media. I pay more attention to LinkedIn. Connect with me on LinkedIn. I'd love to connect with anyone on LinkedIn. And if agents or business owners or anyone has questions, feel free to hit me up on LinkedIn. I'm more than happy to take questions or help out in any way I can.
Awesome. Thanks, John. That's incredible to share that with our audience. So again, I'm really appreciative of the partnership and just you coming on to the podcast today. Thrilled to grow the partnership as well. So thanks again for joining, and we'll be looking forward to growing soon.
Thank you. Appreciate it. I'm excited about the partnership.
Thank you for listening to the End I Quote podcast, brought to you by Coterie Insurance. Coterie puts insurance agents and brokers first, delivering instant business insurance across the United States. With an innovative quoting platform that delivers accurate pricing and bindable quotes in less than 1 minute, Coterie is making small business insurance effortless. Learn more about Coterie Insurance by visiting our website, located in the show notes.